How's it going? I'm standing here in this listing for 1.5 million in Renton, Washington. This is a beautiful, beautiful lake, but I wanted to show you. But this is the point of my my YouTube video. The point of my video right now, you can see that lake. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Right here in Washington, 1.5 million, Renton, Washington, with an additional dwelling unit, so you can use it as a short-term rental or as a long-term rental. But let me get you over here, and I'd like to just kind of talk to you about one of the biggest mistakes that I see with first-time home buyers everywhere, all the time. Okay, so let's get you over here. See that? Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes that first-time home buyers make is they try to wait before they actually sit down with a professional. Let me explain. What people will do is they'll go, you know what? I really want to buy a home. They'll probably sit down with their wife, their spouse, or they'll probably just sit down one day and they'll say, you know what, I'm kind of tired of renting. Or they just finally got their degree and they're thinking, I'd love to just have something that's mine. You know, I want to paint the walls whatever colors I want. I want to do this. I want to do that. And start paying myself, right? And so what they'll do is they'll say, what I want to do now is I'm going to try to just save up as much money as humanly possible. Because what I've heard that you need 25 to 30% down. That's one thing. You do not need 25, 30% down for a home. I promise you don't. And another thing that they'll do is they'll say, let me go ahead and once I have my 20, 30% down, I'll call a real estate broker and I'll sit down with them. Or I'll call a lender and I'll sit down with them. No. What you want to do, what all my buyers do is I always encourage them, sit down with a professional first. Because when you sit down with a professional first, you'll get to understand first the market. How is the market doing? The second thing you'll understand is what the buying process looks like, especially because you're a first-time home buyer. The buying process, you may not know what the contract looks like. So the first thing is we'd want to do everything into bite-sized pieces, right? Because when you're first buying a home, it's very, very gradual, then sudden. And what I want and what any professional would want for a first-time home buyer is how smooth can we keep the transaction for them, right? Because this is already a big stressful moment. It's exciting, like really, really exciting, don't get me wrong, but also really stressful. So the best thing is, well, my voice cracked. The best thing is to sit down with somebody, because then after that, you'll get to see if it's a real estate lender, if it's a real estate broker. You get to know this person will know each other because they work with each other, right? And so what you'll do, let me give you another example. I was able to help a first-time home buyer, and it was a really good friend of mine. And they were saying, you know what, Elias, I'd like to sit down, but I feel like it's way too sudden. I don't want to waste your time. I said, don't worry, you're not wasting my time. Me and my wife, we've been thinking about wanting to buy a home, but I feel like I need to save up 25, 30%, maybe get my credit score better too. And I said, no. What we're going to do, because again, he's my friend, so I can talk to him a little bit more like that. What we're going to do is we're going to sit down, okay? We're going to sit down, you, me, and a lender, and we're going to talk about what the buying process looks like. It's completely free. You don't have to worry about anything. And then as soon as we sit down and we talk about what the buying process looks like, you'll apply, right? Because as soon as you apply, there's a couple things that you can do is you'll get to understand where you are with your budget, right? With your home budget. So if you were looking at homes that were $500,000, $600,000, then you get to understand what the monthly payment would look like. You get to understand what principal is, what principal and interest is, all that stuff, which is really, really important. And we ended up sitting down. He ended up applying with his wife. We talked about what the buying process looks like, went over the contracts, got him to apply. Come to find out, he was able to buy a home. So that one week, we sat down. The next week, we were shopping. The week after that, we got him under contract, and a month later, got him into a home. So if that person, let's say, would have waited another year, 2 years, and decided I finally got my 30% down to buy a home, imagine where they would be at versus now they've owned the home for about a year, 2 years. And that's the thing, right? People, they think that I want to make sure that all my ducks are in a row. Let me help you get the ducks in a row. Let the professional help you get the ducks in a row to figure out what's important and what's not important for you. And again, worst case scenario, what another person will do is they'll think about what first-time home buyers will think is, what if I get rejected and I can't buy a home? I want you to know that is not the case. You will never, ever hear anybody say, no, you were rejected. You can never buy a home ever in your life. I'm sorry. You are doomed to have to rent for the rest of your life. No, it's always a not now. So for example, I had the same thing with one of my other clients. They couldn't buy a home. This was about 2 years ago. They couldn't buy a home because their credit score was down a little bit, and they needed to increase their income because they wrote up too much things. They were a business owner. They wrote off too many things to buy for their home. So what that means now is as soon as we sat down, the lender was able to give them a game plan to figure out, okay, if you were able to not write off this much, if you were able to pay off these credit cards and keep these credit cards paid off, your credit score is going to shoot up to this number. And so he worked on that over and over and over and over for that whole year to best position him to buy a home the year afterwards. So then again, if somebody would have sat there and said, let me try to do this on my own, let me figure out what the problem is here, and let me just save up the money, you never know exactly when you could have been able to buy the home. So again, just to wrap this is what buyers think. A lot of first-time home buyers think that they need to save up money. They need to do this all by themselves, when in reality, it's best to sit down with a real estate broker or a real estate lender now to figure out what the game plan is, because once you are truly, you feel like you're ready, you'll get the timeline needed, and then you can hit the ground running, right? That's the biggest recommendation I could give to any first-time home buyer looking to buy in the market.